Let me get these brothers up on the line. They, of course, are no stranger to those of you that listen to the State of the City, those of you that listen to Conscious Black Radio, as they've been calling for 1 million conscious voters so that we follow and extend and expand on the Million Man March, the Millions More Movement, the Millions Mind March, the Millions Youth March, and all of the other millions that should be standing with us. But we just need 1 million. So let me get them up on the line, introduce to some, reintroduce to others, and welcome back to the State of the City. Again, Brother Jim Klingman, and joining him online is Brother Amefika, one of our elders as well. So let me say welcome, brothers, peace, and welcome to the State of the City. Are you there?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes,
thanks a lot, Brother Darren. Peace to you as well.
Thank you. Honored to have you, brothers. How are you, and how's the family before we get started?
Well, on my end, everybody's fine. You know, I'm taking it day by day, you know, as all of us are, and we're just blessed to be here today to be able to talk with you and your listeners.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and get into it, Brother Jim. Before we get to Brother Amefika, let's give your contact information at blackonomics.com where you can be reached.
What'd you say again?
Let's give your contact information where you can be reached.
Oh, okay.
Please.
I had a beep.
That's right.
My name is Jim Klingman, of course, Klingman. My website is blackonomics.com. I also write a national syndicated newspaper column called Blackonomics. You can see it in your black newspapers all over the country, as well as in the Final Call.
Yes, sir. All right, Brother Amefika, let's go ahead and give out your contact information, my elder, before we go a little further in the conversation.
Yes, brother. The spelling on my first name is A-M-E-F, like in Frank, I-K-A, and my website is www.amefika.com. I can also be reached by phone at area code 561-228-1120, and that number is also to be found on my website.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, we just heard, of course, the message from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan delivered at the homegoing and celebration of the life of the Honorable Man Marion Barry. So as we talk about Blackonomics, before we get started, just your thoughts and comments, Brother Jim, we'll start with you on the legacy of the Honorable Man Marion Barry.
Yes, I was pleased to hear a lot of the information that Minister Farrakhan pointed out, because, of course, those of us who are in tune and conscious about the life of Marion Barry know that he did tremendous things for black people especially, and for others as well, but especially for black people during his time, not only as mayor, but even running up to that. I know personally some friends that I went to college with down in North Carolina who moved to D.C. when Mayor Barry was in office, and they tell me out of their mouths personally how much he helped black people attain positions that eventually led to economic empowerment.
Yes, sir.
And that's what it's all about. We need to have more politicians, and I've written this in my books as well. Our politicians, and Carter G. Woodson, matter of fact, wrote it long before me,
right,
that our black politicians especially need to be men, need to be black men first.
Yes, sir.
And do what they need to do, or what they should do as they hold those political offices. And politicians like Marion Barry and Maynard Jackson and Harold Washington, we need a cadre of those kinds of politicians now.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
To assure that as this public money gets transferred to private hands, we need to be at the head of the line.
That's right. Yes, sir. Clearly. Brother Amefika, your thoughts, comments on the legacy of the Honorable Man Marion Barry and what you heard from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan at the homegoing services for Marion Barry, if you would, my brother.
Well, I would certainly endorse and say Amen Ra Patah.
Yes, sir.
To both what the Honorable Minister had to say and what my colleague Jim Klingman just stated, and go one step further to add that if the current occupant of the presidency of the United States were made of the same or similar substance as Mayor Barry and conducted himself in his high office along the same or similar lines as Mayor Barry, the United States would be in a much better and more highly regarded and respected position around the world
Yes, sir.
than we find ourselves in today.
Yes, sir. Clearly. Well, thank you very much. And as we go a little deep in the conversation, again, family, just tuning in, having a conversation with Brother Jim Klingman and, of course, by Amefika, talking about, again, Blackonomics. Well, let's talk about this issue that you two have been championing and calling for, which is 1 million conscious black voters. Let's talk about the importance of that, Brother Jim, if you could.
Well, I'd like to defer first to Brother Amefika. It's really his concept that we kind of worked with about 7 years ago.
Yes, sir.
I'd like for him to just open up with that part, and I'll come in after.
Okay, Brother Amefika, if you would.
Jim should know better than to relinquish the podium to an old preacher.
Yes, sir.
But because I love and respect the brother so much, I'll be uncharacteristically brief.
All right.
The idea really comes from a position, Brother Darren, that I sort of, at least not coined the phrase, but applied the word practical
Yes.
to nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't take a lot of time talking about where that came from, but
Sure.
the idea of practical nationalists to coincide with the more familiar cultural nationalists.
Right, right.
The practical nationalist takes the position, essentially, that all of these great and wonderful theoretical concepts and constructs that we give voice to and speak fondly about do not have much meaning to the rank and file of our people unless we can take those concepts down and apply them where the rubber meets the road.
That's right.
So we who were involved with the effort to create the movement called the Movement to Bring Back Black, which was called for by Bob Law
Yes.
and Jim Klingman,
Yes, sir.
and I lent my assistance to that effort, take the position that we are practical nationalists.
Yes, sir.
And we seek to take these idealized concepts and bring them to the level where they can be put into the form of some sort of mechanism, methodology, entities that can carry these forth. So, for example, you hear a lot of people talking in the wake of what has happened with these police murders of citizens about the various kinds of things that we should be doing or that someone should be doing.
Yes.
Most of the people who are talking are not talking about doing anything themselves. They're offering their opinions of what somebody, whoever the somebody is, ought to be doing.
Yes, sir.
Well, Jim and I, being true to our practical nationalistic position, say, well, okay, since they're talking about black people needing to either form an independent black political party, or as even Dr. Anderson and Dr. Milligan mentioned yesterday on another program, that we should vote as a block. Black people should vote as a block. Well, what we're saying is that's a good idea, so now let's do it.
Yes, sir.
That's the next thing. After you talk about it, if you agree that it makes sense, now the question is, how do we do it? Oh, let's do it, and then how do we go about the business of doing it? So what we're proposing, we're saying that there is hardly an election at the national level where a solid block of thinking, conscious black people could not provide the swing vote or the margin of victory for whichever party and whichever candidate that block of voters chose to lend their solid support behind.
Yes, sir.
And therefore, it makes sense for us, if we're serious about wanting to be able to impact
Right.
public policy decisions, and that's what politics is all about in the final analysis, influencing public policy. If we really are serious about doing that, then let us form ourselves into a force to be reckoned with in the electoral political arena. Let us rally together at least 1 million conscious black voters who will agree, if they are already registered, to change their registration and if they're not already registered, to register as no party affiliation.
Yes, sir.
Now, in some jurisdictions, the reference is something other than no party affiliation, but the important thing for your listeners to be aware of, Brother Darren, is that we're not asking or suggesting that people register as independents.
Right.
And the reason for that is that in many political jurisdictions around the country, there is in fact an independent party, or a party that calls itself the Independent Party.
Yes.
And if in those jurisdictions our people were to change their registration to, or to register as independent, they would in effect be registering in the party in that jurisdiction that calls itself the Independent Party.
Yes, sir.
So what the designation is, for example, in my jurisdiction here in South Florida, Palm Beach, Florida, is no party affiliation.
Okay.
So whatever is the version of that in anyone's jurisdiction, we would want them to register as that. That puts us in a position, Brother Darren, of being independent of either political party,
right,
and owe nobody any allegiance, and we have no allies except ourselves. So that way we're in a position to say to anyone who values 1 million voters or more voting together, and whatever financial contributions to a particular campaign those 1 million might represent,
right,
they have to come to us, and then we say to them what it is that our planks and our platform are, that a politician or a party which seeks our support, voting and financial, must agree and make a commitment to support.
Yes, sir.
Then we do, as Claude Anderson likes to say, we have created a quid pro quo.
That's right.
We've gotten something in exchange for what they're asking us to give to them. So we are in the process, as we speak, of seeking support from brothers like yourself who have a platform from which to speak to thousands and perhaps even millions of people.
Yes, sir.
That we should get this thing done.
That's right.
This is not something that's rocket science.
No.
This is not something that white people could, if they wanted to, stop us from doing if we determined that this is something we wanted to do.
Yes.
It's a simple matter of responding either through Jim's Blackonomics page,
right,
or my website, www.amefika.com, and letting us know that you want to be one of the million or one in the million. We don't care how you word it, but we want you to let us know that you want to join and become a part of this methodology here to create this power block of conscious. We're not looking for unconscious black folk, because they just make mischief and create dead weight. We're looking for 1 million conscious, thinking black folks who are committed to the uplift and advancement of our people,
yes,
to join with us in this movement, and we will show this country and the world, but most particularly, we will show our fellow members of the African race what we can do when we put aside our differences sufficient,
yes,
to join forces and concentrate our time, talent, and ability and resources,
yes,
on achieving a specific objective.
Yes, sir. All right, beautiful. Well, as you talked about the practical, of course, Brother Jim, got to come to you to talk about the tactical, because the practical and the tactical have to go hand in hand. Let's talk about the importance of the economic part of that, and having a black PAC group, as we know in Washington, D.C., for those that maybe just witnessed the $1.1 trillion spending, the omnibus spending bill, or omnibus spending bill. Some just call it a heist that took place this past Thursday. And we saw where, again, PAC groups, whether we're talking about the American Israeli Political Action Group of Israel, as we saw Wall Street, which again are the biggest beneficiaries, if not the biggest Grinches, in terms of the spending bill and the enormous amount of money that now Wall Street will get on top of the bailout of 2008 and 2009. Speak to the importance of a black PAC group, because all other groups, when we look at the issue of the immigration and what the Hispanics wanted and what the Asians wanted and what the 1%ers wanted in terms of cheap labor, they had a PAC group there that was calling the president, calling the members of Congress, calling the members of the Senate in order to get, of course, what it is that they wanted. So speak to the importance of our people having a black PAC, if you could, my brother.
It is so vitally important, Brother Darren, And I would refer the listeners to read a book called African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order by Dr. Amos Wilson.
Yes, sir.
It is so enlightening as to the things that you're talking about. But your question in regards to building this movement and forming our own pact to be able to advantage ourselves through public policy is so important. And what I thought about as far as what Amos Wilson has taught us is that, black people like to stand around and have symbolic kinds of gestures, and we settle for that.
Right.
And I remember in his book, he talked about how we like to worship the fact that our people built the pyramids 4,000 years ago. And then he says, but we will not build pyramids in the present so our children may see what we left behind for them.
Right. Yes, sir.
So it's a lot of conversation, but not a lot of action.
Right.
And if we can't see from what you just described as the recent developments that took place in D.C. with the financial markets, and I would add to your list the college debt that's over $1 trillion now.
That's right.
And having a tremendously adverse effect on black families and black colleges. I mean, if we don't wake up and do something in response to this toward our own benefit,
that's right,
then I don't know what else it's going to take.
Yes.
Politics and economics, of course, they work hand in hand, except the black hand is not in the process.
Right. Yes, sir.
And we need to, like you said, form this pact. We could do that with 1 million conscious voters and consumers and make sure that we get some quote in return for our quid.
That's right.
We're not right now.
Yes, sir.
And the only way we're going to make this happen, again, as Amos Wilson says, much of the behavior of our oppressor is due to the nature of our own behavior among black people and our attitudes.
Right. That's right.
And he said our oppressor cannot be what he is unless we are what we are.
Yes,
so
sir.
if we change, he has to change.
That's right. Clearly.
If we get involved and have an impact on this political system, it has to change, especially if 1 million black folks got together and said, we're going to vote as a bloc, and we're going to leverage our votes. We're also going to leverage our dollars to get what we want and need.
That's right.
So I think that we spend too much time on symbolism, too much time on empty rhetoric and conversations that are not going to take us anywhere and not cause us to do anything reciprocal. We need to have some practical action that Amefika just described in accordance with what's going on in Washington and what is going on in our separate communities.
Yes, sir.
We're at the bottom of every good category and at the top of every bad one.
That's right.
I don't know what else black people need for us to wake up, stand up, get up, do something about our position in this country as well as our children's future.
That's right. Again, family, just tuning in, having a conversation with, again, that was Dr. and Brother Jim Klingman, along with Baba Amefika, talking about blackonomics. And, of course, I heard our great elder, Dr. Claude Anderson, on with Carl Nelson last night, talking about just that, how we are moving from being second-class citizens to third-class citizens to fourth-class citizens with the recent developments of what's going on in Washington, D.C., around the issue of the amnesty for the immigrants and, of course, the use of cheaper labor and how many of our programs are being cut out at the HBCUs and even on the local levels in terms of the community colleges. We're clearly seeing this there's no playing field, and we're being moved off the field for the most part. But as we talk about that, as you heard Minister Farrakhan reference Dr. King, Brother Amefika, and the night before Dr. King, of course, was assassinated, and I don't have that speech, of course, plugged in right now, but he talked about and gave some practical actions and tactical actions for our people to use. He even talked about boycott, divestment, and sanctions at that time. He named 3 companies, Wonder Bread, Coca-Cola, and Seal Test Ice Cream. Can you speak to the importance, I think, as we're looking at these developments in Washington, D.C., or the developments in terms of the issue of police brutality, and very few of the leaders outside of yourselves and a few others have talked about a real boycott in terms of tactical and practical things to give our people to do, not being again, generic, but being more specific in terms of targeting certain businesses or certain corporations, and then giving our people the phone numbers of a Jamie Dimon. Can you imagine we said we pulling all our money out of J.P. Morgan after what that chump just did the other day, or because of all of the enormous crimes that J.P. Morgan has committed against our people with the housing market fiasco. But if you can speak to some practical things, as Dr. King talked about, and then giving that information to our people, whether it be through our churches, through our mosques, through, again, as you talk about our black conscious organizations, because the old saying is conscious is as conscious does. So, Brother Amefika, if you could speak to the importance of again, what Dr. King talked about, the practical things, the bank ends, the insurance ends, not these sleep ends and die ends that's going on, but something practical and tactical that we should be doing and must be doing. If we really want to get justice, then we got to take it. It's never given. But speak to that if you could, my brother.
If you would allow me a little latitude in responding to that, Brother Darren, and I think it'll come together and make some sense when I get it back to the point of the specific response. As the three of us are well aware, one of the most successful boycotts that we have had conducted in our history, and there have been more than one, but one of the most successful was, of course, the Montgomery bus boycott.
That's right.
And they set a goal at the outset. They wanted to destroy the segregationist policy that did not allow blacks to sit anywhere other than on the rear or in the back of the bus. And even then, if a white person needed a seat, the black person had to give up their seat, even in the black, so-called black portion or area or section of the bus. Then they also wanted a few jobs, additional jobs, driver jobs, and maybe some mechanics jobs. Now, the practical nationalists viewed this situation and said that at the point along the way that it was realized that and proven, because they knew it theoretically to begin with.
Yes.
That's why they mounted a boycott. But at a point it was proven that the bus company could not survive and certainly could not profit without the ridership represented by the blacks who rode the buses. So the black people who rode the buses in the city of Montgomery were the ones who generated the revenue that made the bus company profitable. We practical nationalists, and I was one of them at the time who suggested it to some of my integrationist friends and associates and tried to get them to take it up the line, at the point that they realized that it was in fact true that the bus company could not survive without the black ridership and their money. The objective or the goal of the protest should have changed from simply getting the right to sit wherever they wanted on a bus company that still was owned by the white people.
Yes, sir.
They should have called upon the millions, literally millions of people around the country and around the world who were empathetic and sympathetic and supportive of Dr. King and his colleagues, and call upon those folks to send in money to contribute to a fund which would then be used to purchase the bus company.
Yes, sir.
In which case they would not be giving up their original goal, which was to be able to ride anywhere on the bus they wanted.
That's right.
But they would own the bus company, and thus, of course, as owners, be able to ride wherever they want. But not only that, all of the jobs would be theirs to determine who got the jobs.
That's right.
In addition to that, they could also show how magnanimous they were and non-racist they would be by allowing the white people the privilege of sitting anywhere they wanted on this now black-owned bus company.
Yes, sir.
That's the kind of flexibility when you shift from what might have been your initial goal to a more pragmatic goal that serves your purposes to a greater extent and more in line with perpetuity.
Yes.
I have suggested to different people that I know and have come in contact with in the wake of the Ferguson situation that they might want to take a look at what is going on in Ferguson right now and what they're protesting about. Mm-hmm. And they might want to consider what should in fact be the goals or objectives? What kinds of things have been made possible now?
Right. Yes, sir.
That the Ferguson situation has gained the attention of people not only all around the United States and the Western Hemisphere, but in fact all around the world.
That's right.
What might they call upon that measure and degree and expanse of support to do that can bring about some permanent change
Yes.
for the people of Ferguson and its environs? And I would like to think, Brother Darren, that that is the sort of thing that Dr. King was alluding to in his speech. Of course, he didn't live after that
Right.
to be able to demonstrate what he meant. But for those of us who are of a practical nationalist orientation, this is how we felt that Dr. King was making references to. Because keep in mind now, black folks don't have enough money invested in the form of investments
Sure.
in any of these companies.
Right.
What
That's
we
right.
do, of course, is spend billions of dollars with these people.
That's right.
But we're not going to get black folk to not continue to spend that money unless and until we organize ourselves. Right now, as we speak on this phone,
Yes.
the only group of race-conscious black people in America who are organized to the extent that the leadership could call upon the followership and the members, so to speak, to stand back and do not support or give their support or spend their money with anybody and expect the membership and the followership to do as they are called upon to do would be the Nation of Islam.
Yes, sir.
Why?
Right.
Because none of the rest of us are organized.
Right.
We're out here as Lone Rangers, and I wrote a black paper titled Free Agency and the Black Liberation Movement.
Yes, sir.
All of us, for the most part, except for those of you brothers who are in or affiliated with the Nation of Islam and who are race conscious, the rest of us are essentially free agents, which means that we're free to do as we damn well please and not do what may be important for us to do.
Yes, sir.
Unless and until we change that and follow the spirit of what Mr. Garvey said about the importance of organization. He said that the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization.
That's right.
And I interpret that to mean the lack of effective organization.
That's right.
There is no mystery as to why the only group or organization of race-conscious black people in the country who can decide upon a course of action, call upon the members and supporters to pursue that course of action, and know that it's going to be followed through to achieve the end result is, in fact, the Nation of Islam.
Yes, sir.
So all of the rest of us out here who profess to be, not practical necessarily, but who profess to be race conscious,
Yes.
we need to consider the fact that we're not organized, and we need to heed the advice. I remember it well because I was there.
Yes.
That Minister Farrakhan, the last words that he said to us during the original Million Man March, October 16th, 1995.
Yes, sir.
He said, return to your respective homes and places
Right.
and join some organization that is working for the uplift and advancement of black people. But he didn't stop there. He said, however, if there is no such organization in your respective home or place that is deserving of your joining and participating and supporting, you are duty-bound to start one.
That's right. That's what he said.
So in other words, there are no excuses.
Yes.
So the object of everything right now, Brother Darren,
Yes, sir.
has to be focused on those of us who profess to be African-centered, race-conscious,
Right.
and even those few of us left who still like to call ourselves black nationalists.
Come on.
We have got to organize.
Organize,
And we can organize around the mutual themes as Maulana Karenga events that first, operational unity,
Yes.
as my friend Hekima Kanyama in Atlanta is saying now, functional unity, meaning the same thing.
That's right.
Unity without necessarily uniformity.
Yes, sir. We call it organizational, operational unity is what we must have, and we can't have free agents because in some instances they're not free. They just loose, Doc.
They just agents.
They're not free. They just loose, and you can tell by their behavior because they're not willing to organize. And again, that's important. Again, family, just tuning in, having a conversation with Brother Jim Klingman and Brother, who you just heard, Brother Amefika. As we're talking about that, brother, today there are those that are marching in cities across America, those marching in Washington, D.C. We've seen the cry-ins, we've seen the die-ins, we've seen the lay-ins, some sleep-ins, but you've never seen this. We've even seen members of the Congressional Black Caucus walk outside with their hands up, saying, hands up, don't shoot. Now, I keep saying it's shameful because they're in a position of power, they're in a position to execute power, and they're acting like they're powerless. You haven't seen this from the Hispanics. You haven't seen this from the gays. You haven't seen this kind of action from the members of the Jewish community. You haven't even seen it, as Dr. Claude Anderson would say, the humpbacks, the brokebacks, the midgets, the one-eyed bandits, and anybody else. We're the only ones that would go out and do this kind of behavior as opposed to using our $1 trillion that we as black folk have, which will make us about the 9th or 10th powerful country in the world as a people. Speak to the importance, Brother Jim Klingman, if you could, of, again, using the power as we saw it under or during the apartheid era in South Africa, of using the boycott, using divestment, and using sanctions, and not just telling our people that we have to march. Shopton and Jackson, they disappoint me because they know the phone number of Jamie Dimon. Why not give the people the phone number, the office? Why not march on Wall Street and Park Avenue where the decisions are made? Because the unseen is more powerful than the seen. And they showed that this past Thursday. If you needed a clear example of how the unseen is more powerful than the seen, Wall Street and everything they wanted to be able to take that vocal rule out of the Dodd-Frank Act in order to have those bank-ins that's about to take place, in order to rob more of the American people of their pension, they use the power of, again, their might. So speak to the importance of using what we've used in the past, Brother Jim, the boycott, the divestment, and the sanctions, and we could easily give that to our people and then show them the end result in terms of being at the table and determine public policy, because that's what ultimately got Dr. King killed, because he helped to shape and determine public policy in this country as he made the connection between the war at home and the war that was taking place abroad, because all that money was being taken out of the inner cities of America and social programs and being sent overseas to fight, of course, an unjust war. And we still see that going on with the recent report regarding the CIA and torture. And I could go on and on and on. But speak to the importance of using the value of the boycott, divestment, and sanction, and not just going out there marching as a protester, but having the ability to be, of course, addressing these issues to get this weight up off of our people, if you would, my brother.
Yes, sir. You're making too much sense, Brother Darren. You know that, don't you?
Yes, sir.
The black consumer segment is the most studied consumer segment in the history of the world, probably, number one. Number two, the black consumer segment is the most brand loyal segment in this country. We are the profit margins for many companies, many products in this country.
That's right.
So not to leverage that, to squander it in essence,
Right.
is just sinful in my opinion. And power is not power unless you use it.
That's right.
How do you know you have power unless you use it? You don't know if a battery that you buy has power until you put it into something and turn it on.
That's right.
So to say that black people have spending power is really a misnomer,
Right.
because it's spending weakness right now. Because we don't leverage it.
Right.
So we can have a tremendous impact on things that you're saying, like with the banks and other corporations that we support, simply by, as Amos Wilson said, changing our behavior toward our own oppressor. Right now, we're financing our own oppression, and we should be financing our own freedom.
That's right.
With our dollars.
Yes, sir.
And this whole notion of power, if you've read Amos Wilson's book, Blueprint for Black Power,
Right.
you will see the different definitions that he has in that book, that talk about how we can exercise power on many levels. But again, power is not power unless you show
That's right.
that you have it by using it.
Yes, sir.
And, he said that we waste a lot of time trying to transform trying to transform others.
Right.
We should be transforming ourselves.
Yes.
And once we do that, the power will then be in our hands. We're always playing from a deficit model instead of an asset model.
That's right.
When it comes to economic empowerment. Not using what we have, but like you said, doing these symbolic marches and spending money in order to do it. And I call it marching to freedom on a treadmill. We're never going to get anywhere. We're just going to waste a lot of energy and, along the way, a lot of dollars.
That's right.
Most of which will go to companies that don't belong to black people.
Yes, sir. Clearly.
So we have to change our minds. We have to change our behavior. We have to understand what runs this country, how much of it we have, and then leverage what we have, and that's votes and dollars.
That's right.
To get what we need to have and stop concentrating on trying to change the hearts of folks who really don't care anything about us.
That's right. Yes, sir.
That's not going to happen anyway. We're not going to change their hearts. That's a God problem.
That's right.
So
yes, sir.
Let him deal with that.
Right. That's
But
right.
we need to be about ourselves, about our own future, about our children, and do the things that other groups, like you mentioned, Amefika mentioned, are doing to take care of their future and their children. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But unfortunately, many black people, when they hear us talk, oh, that's too black, oh, that's separatist, oh, that's racist.
Right.
That's also ridiculous.
Yes, sir. Clearly.
If we're going to be accused of being separatists and racist because we love our children, we love ourselves, then so be it as far as I'm concerned.
That's right.
But it's really a ridiculous, nonsensical notion that would be put on black people simply because we're trying to do what we're supposed to do as, number one, good stewards of our resources, and number two, good parents and grandparents trying to build a future for our children.
That's right. The young people.
So we have to change.
Might I add to that?
Yes,
might
sir.
I add to that? Because I think it's interesting that Jim said what he just said, Jim and Darren. If you recall, there was a comment that was made by Donald Sterling when he was under fire about the situation of so-called racist comments that he'd made to his girlfriend. You will recall that he said something that somehow slipped right past most black folk.
Yes.
One of those that we didn't say anything about that. He talked about the difference between the way Jews with a lot of money use their money to enhance and support and advance the interests of Jews.
That's right.
But black folk who have a lot of money do none of the kinds of things for their own people that Jewish people do with theirs. That was a very critical statement, and I think that we missed the boat by not seizing on that.
That's right.
And talking about the implications of it, because it ties directly to what the two of you were just talking about in terms of what we actually do with money when we do have it.
That's right. And the other comment he made talking about how Jews treat the Africans in Israel. They make sure they got that off. They make sure they got that off the recorder. I might have to come back and play that as we do our top 10 stories toward the close of the year, because he was very key in terms of what he's talking about. And I say that because when all this discussion is going on about immigration, and you get members of the Jewish community in terms of Rupert Murdoch Greenberg, in terms of the so-called one percenters, Bill Gates and others that are pushing this on the American people. At the same time, Israel ain't opening up their gates. They're not opening up their doors. They're not opening up their country. They got concentration camps out there and in the Negev Desert in terms of the rounding up of Africans, and not to speak of in terms of how the Palestinians are being treated. But I just wanted to say that, and not to digress too far. As we talk about some practical things, Brother Amefika, during the time of the height of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions and apartheid, as members of the Arab community are executing now against Israel, why is it we don't hear the civil wrong leaders in terms of the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons that get their funding, and I could be answering my own question, getting their funding from Wall Street, and so therefore they're not going to talk about, okay, if we want to get justice in St. Louis, which some say Ferguson, but St. Louis, if we want to get justice in New York, then why not do as was done during boycott movement and divestment movement, which was to target the police associations who have their funds invested on Wall Street, and even the teachers unions who have their funds invested in many of these hedge fund companies. Why not just say, call for the teachers, if they want to stop seeing their students being killed, let's pull your money out of that investment company. Let's pull your money out of JP Morgan Bank, and then see what kind of response we get to being able to change public policy, not by carrying out a vote, but by, again, using that 1 million conscious voters program and analysis that you laid out. But can you speak to that, brother?
I definitely want to speak to that, but I want to speak to it from the last comment you made, going back to toward the first, and that has to do with why is it that Jim and I are promoting the idea of creating this 1 million conscious black voter block of people? And the two of you have already talked about the fact that what that 1 million plus can do it's not even intended to be limited to what effect we can have on electoral political activities in this country and public policy, but it also has very serious financial implications, because if you have 1 million conscious black folk, you also have 1 million black folks who have some measure of resources because they've had the sanity to maintain some sort of good sense about how they manage their financial and other related affairs. So still we get back to the point, my brother, where the fundamental thing that we need to do is to organize those of us who have all these great and wonderful thoughts about what we'd like to see done for black people. Unless and until we organize and give the Nation of Islam some company, but by that I mean they don't have to continue to be the only group out there that is organized and can effectively carry out something that they consider to be programmatically sound in the interests of the uplift and advancement of black folk. We've got to do something, my brother, about pulling together all of these disparate entities that I referred to as free agents. Okay, you referred to them as loose agents, and I think I like that. I might have to borrow that from you.
Yes, please.
But it's true. We cannot do any of those great and wonderful things. We can talk all we want about black folks boycotting something, but for every individual black person that boycotts the thing or the place, there's going to be 10 or 15 black folks that are going to sneak around and do the scab kind of thing that the unions used to talk about, and sneak in the back door and buy whatever it is they want to buy. Unless we had a common cause that we have committed to, or at least a segment of us have committed to, none of those things, no matter how great they might be if they were to be pulled off, are going to be pulled off because they require organization as a foundation and the fundamental attribute of it.
Right. Yes, sir. Clearly. As we begin to wrap up, I want to get your thoughts and comments in terms of, again, one of the things that I heard the great Harry Belafonte mention regarding all of the talk about gun control and how we as a people, again, as the old saying goes, we're not even at the center of the conversation, and of course not even at the table. And as an old saying goes with Chicago-style politics that Barack Obama took to him when he went to Washington, D.C., that when you're in Chicago and when the syndicates and when the gangster banksters and when the non-governmental organizations are at the table, and if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And clearly we see that our people are on the menu right now. Malcolm used to say, because you're at the table and there's nothing on the plate doesn't make you a diner. Right now, we're not even at the table when we look at what is going on in this country right now. And what more proof do we need than what we saw again this past Thursday night? And I say that because, again, coming back to, as we expand the envelope, what is taking place globally right now with the emergence of China, with the emergence of Russia, with the emergence of India, and even the emergence of African countries, because that is where the final frontier and final battle is taking place. Everybody is moving away from the American dollar, moving away from the petrodollar, and we have to raise the consciousness of that 1 million and even more to begin to move again away from the dollar as well and begin to look at how we can organize, because money, again, is just a tool to be able to use to, again, have the revolution and evolutionary raising of the consciousness of the people and the activities of the people, and ultimately raising the standards of the people, if you would. So can you speak to that, Brother Jim?
Yes, sir. And I would like to just, kind of bring this thing under a broad umbrella. And it goes back to what you have said in terms of what we need to do with our dollars on a grand scale with withdrawing them. And I love what you wrote and sent out on your Facebook page about Chase and the teachers' pensions and all of these things. There are things we can do
That's right.
if we would just have the will to do them. And I have a quote that I put on my site, I think yesterday or the day before. W.E.B. Du Bois said in 1898 that black people should support our own businesses, even sometimes to our disadvantage.
Right.
And what he meant by that, if it costs 50 cents more, spend the 50 cents. If you have to drive a couple of miles, go do that.
That's right. And
But
then
do what we have to do in order to be free. And if it means withdrawing our money from pension plans or our investment, the greatest example of economic sanctions comes from this country.
That's right. Look what
They do it all the time when somebody does something they don't like.
Right. Look what they're trying to do to
And
Russia.
here we
and Putin.
are marching.
Right.
They didn't go over there in Libya and places like that in March.
Nope. That's right.
They didn't go to South Africa in March.
Nope.
I mean, eventually, economic sanctions took hold,
Right.
and they got what they wanted.
That's right.
So the best example we can have is look at what this country does when somebody does something to them that
That's
they
right.
don't like.
That's right.
Now, getting back to the umbrella piece, what Amefika said about the Million Man March, I have to use that because that was the greatest event
Yes,
that
sir.
I've ever attended in my life.
That's right.
And
Yes.
it brought for me the words that Amefika quoted. I went home and did something.
Yes, sir.
I went home and started a Black Chamber of Commerce. My thing is economic empowerment.
Thank you.
We need business advocacy organizations. I started it in 1996. I also helped start 12 other Black chambers. Had an impact on the one that you have there in Baltimore, Brother Lou Fields.
Yes, sir.
Amefika is an educator, among other things, but he's an educator. What did he do? He didn't do this when he got back. I think the school was already started, but he started and founded.
It was a result of the Million
There
Man
you
March.
go. There
Beautiful.
you go.
Yes, sir.
He founded an African-centered school. And you know what else he did, Brother Darren?
Yes, sir.
He walked from West Palm Beach to Washington, D.C. to bring attention to the fact that black people need to take more responsibility for the education of our own children.
That's right.
And he was 69 years old when he did
Thank
it.
you. Yes, sir.
That's what I'm talking about, doing something.
That's right.
Not just talking.
That's right.
Not just sitting around and pontificating about, woe is me, black
right.
people and the white man won't let me do this. Do what we can do
That's
through
right.
organization, using our dollars and our votes, and we can have whatever we need to have
That's right.
in this country, and we'll be doing it with our own resources.
Yes, sir, clearly. Let's begin to get some closing comments, Brother Amefika, and then your contact information where you can be reached. And of course, we're going to try to do this at least once a month, have you on, and then next time we'll open up the lines to some of our callers that may have questions. But let's get your contact information and closing comments, and just thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule on a Saturday and joining us on the State of the City for the first time, sir.
Well, we thank you for inviting us to share with your audience. Again, my website is www.amefika.com, and Amefika is spelled A-M-E-F-I-K-A, www.amefika.com. And my phone number is listed on the website just under my name. It's my name, and then it says the Raceman.
Yes.
I call myself the Raceman, and people who know me well refer to me as the Raceman. And that's a very proud situation, the tradition that came out of.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Brother Jim, if you would, closing comments, sir?
Yes, sir. Blackonomics.com. That's BLACKONOMICS. You click on bio. My phone number's there. You can send an email to jklingman@blackonomics.com. And I look forward to hearing from listeners saying to me by email or by phone call,
Yes, sir.
I want to be one of a million
Yes.
black conscious voters and consumers.
Yes, sir. Now, if they're
Absolutely.
not conscious, we're gonna have to do a dummy's guide 101 how to begin to become conscious, brother. We just got to put it out
Brother
there.
Darren, if people would go there in Baltimore, I don't know who I was listening, but I know in Baltimore, Brother Haki Ami
Yes, sir.
has this book, or either Brother Jabari,
Right.
African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order. Garveyism in the age of globalism.
Yes, sir.
All the answers about what a true nationalist is,
Right.
about our behavior and everything else is in that book. Go get it and read
Okay.
it.
I'm sure they have it at Everyone's Place bookstore, Brother
There
Natim,
you
right
go.
there, 1356 West North Avenue. Shout out to all of the brothers and sisters and his fine staff up there. So thank you, brothers. Go in peace, and I'll be in contact with you, all right?
Appreciate you, brother.
You have a good day.
Take
All
care,
right,
brother.
thanks again. Thank you for all that you
Bye-bye.
have done and continue to do. Peace now. Again, family, just tuning in, just concluded our conversation with Brother Jim Kleeman of blackonomics.com. Brother Amefika, again, talking about blackonomics. We'll be back in the saddle, ready to do battle on Monday at 12 noon. So in the meantime, in between time, we got plenty of guests coming your way, from Professor Griff to the living legend Baba Dick Gregory and many more for sure. Stay tuned again for the truth gonna set you free. So until then, peace. Be safe, stay watchful, stay vigilant, stay out of them stadiums, stay out of them malls. Let's continue to fight. Peace.